on my.
Here we are.
Oh, there we go. All right. A few of you may have actually been watching us for the last minute. We don't know what was happening, but StreamYard had a little bit of a lag. So if you saw us kind of having some small talk, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. But anyways, thank you so much for joining us today on the Uncensored Entrepreneurs. Today, we're going to be talking about how to navigate the hate, or as I like to say, instead of haters, I just call them professional critics. And so we're going to be giving you some tips on how to navigate that storm, how to deal with it, and to continue to move forward with a strong mindset and heart set. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
And welcome to the
There we are.
Entrepreneurs. I think we need to put a bloopers reel together.
Totally.
There's always something, right? Technology gets the best of us at times, but that's what this show is all about. It's about going with the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs, and the stuff that really happens behind the scenes, which is why we really don't edit most of our stuff. However, Christina may prove that in the future to be something that, a challenge.
This might be necessary. Who knows?
As soon as we stop going live, Christina's like,
I know, right? I'm like, I gotta go touch up my lipstick. I've been talking all morning. Okay, that's what I went to do. Like, there's my secret sauce. Okay.
Right. So here's the thing. Thank you for tuning in. I see people coming in from all different channels that we have out there. And again, we've announced this the last couple of weeks. We're finally getting into the podcast platform. So we're on Spotify now. We're still figuring out a couple little quirks here with Apple, but we're supposed to be on that very, very soon. So we're excited to finally bring you content in that format as well. And you know what? These last few weeks have been pretty crazy. We've had people out sick, right? I was one of them that one week. We've been traveling. We've had all different kinds of things going on. So you can see that we're back with smiling faces, all four of us. And in fact, I'd like to start with a little small chat. We actually have 5 on the show today.
I was going to say, actually, I think there's 5 people on there because, Christina, do you have something to tell everybody?
Yeah. So this past week, and I'll tell you, it's kind of a funny story. So this past week, we had some really good news at the doctor, and I finally feel comfortable sharing with the world that we are expecting a healthy baby boy coming in February. After many trials and tribulations, right? Because it's kind of like fireworks, right? But after many trials and tribulations, and I know many women go through struggles when it comes to getting pregnant, and we've been through that. We've been through the heartbreak and the disappointment and all of those things. And really, my message to you today is keep seeking solutions, keep holding out hope, keep trying if you feel like something's missing, right? We just felt like there was something missing in our family. And it was so funny this last week because Izzy, we bought her a shirt that says, "I'm going to be a big sister," and she's 7 and she's like over the moon. She cannot wait to have her own little doll, right?
Tell her.
I love it.
So I told her, I waited, my family went up to Canada without me a week prior and just said I was in town for business, but really I was waiting for another ultrasound and wanted to make sure everything was okay before we told Izzy, because I have had the heartbreak of having to tell her that we lost a baby, and that was just like the worst ever.
She doesn't understand. What does that mean?
No, exactly. And so it was just one of those things. And now, and so I actually, when I first got to Canada, I brought her over and I just said, I have something to tell you. And I put my arm around her and showed her the pictures of the ultrasound. And I said, I've got a baby in my belly. I found, you're going to be a big sister. And she just started to cry, right? Like she's such an emotional little being. And she's just like, and the first thing that she said to me, and this tells you about who she is she's like, I'm so happy. I'm so happy for you. right? Knowing my heartbreak, knowing how I felt through all of this. She said, yeah, she said, I'm just so happy for you. And I said, I'm so happy for us. And so a couple of days ago, last Thursday, I said, okay, now I'm ready. We can tell people, because she just wants to tell everybody, right?
Yeah,
She's
of course,
so
of course.
proud,
Big
right?
news.
And so I said, why don't you put your shirt on and we'll take a picture and I'll put it out there. And she goes, okay, but Mom, and like, this is how I know we need to do a little, like a little rewind and a little readjust to like how we mentor her. But she's like, okay, Mom, but like, how are we going to make money? And I'm like,
that's what big sisters are for, right? She's got to step up.
Companies out there that would like to sponsor one of our children here on Uncensored Entrepreneur, let us know. Send us your.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
She would like to gain some money with her baby sister. I mean, her baby brother.
She liked to profit, right? And I laughed so hard, and I was like, "Oh, honey, it's not all about making money. It's not all of. This is about connecting with people. This is about giving people hope. This is about being vulnerable and sharing our lives with people, so that they can, they can do the same thing. They can go and advocate for themselves. And there's always good news if you just keep holding out faith, right? We talked a lot about faith over fear.
Yeah.
We really had a lot of faith over the last years that this was meant to be. So thank you so much for letting me share.
Congratulations.
If you guys didn't see her live either, go watch it, because she tells you exactly her journey of how she got to where she's at. And so if any of you guys have suffered or experienced a miscarriage, listen to what she says, listen to her story, because it is amazing. I sat the other day reading the comments. Christina, like all these people, it's funny how an announcement of a baby and losing somebody can help so many people, because all these women were asking you all these questions, and they were just asking and asking. I was like, oh my gosh.
Well, and you know what? It's so funny. So today we're going to talk about haters, right? Today we're going to have that little conversation.
Perfect segue.
But it is. I'm going to tell you, once there's something that goes viral on social media, you are going to, no matter what it is, if it's a baby announcement, you're going to have polarizing views. And so where I thought I was doing something and bringing hope in a video that has gone viral now, there were so many people that were like, how dare she gatekeep? How dare she not tell us what that virus is? How dare she not tell us what the medication is? And I'm like, do we forget that there's medical privacy in this world? Did we forget that we don't have to? And like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to say what medication it is. So you go out and take something that might not be good for you, or you don't even have a diagnosis. So it's really interesting that we're having the conversation today, that even with good news, even with positive things, you're going to get negative
in different forms, right?
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, wow. Awesome. Well, we all have, and when I say all, not just the four of us or the five of us, but every single person that will be watching this, whether you're watching it live or later on replay, has experienced some level of hate, or as I like to say, professional critics. So as we dive in to today's episode, I want to mention that today's episode is brought to you by one of our sponsors,
Dan Meyer from Sonic VA. You can get a hold of him at 925-595-4079 for all your Sonic VA needs, and everybody needs a virtual assistant. And let me tell you, today is World Gratitude Day.
Ooh, wow.
So we're going to talk about navigating the haters, but we're also going to be grateful for them.
Absolutely. I was gonna say it's a very hard thing to do, but there is an element of being grateful, right?
Yes.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so let's dive in, and we'll be talking more about Dan later and his awesome services. So, Christina, do you want to talk about actually what, a little bit more about what actually happened?
Well, and Starr, I know that you've had some experience recently with this, and I think it's just an important thing to talk about. I actually had the most hate ever. Like I'm so much better now. Now I can just dismiss people's bad attitudes. But I had a video go viral in January, and like between all my platforms, 20 million people have seen it. Okay. And so it was about moving from Canada to Mexico. It was about the benefits and the cost efficiency of that, about learning Spanish and embracing the culture, all these things that I literally did off the cuff of my head, or off the top of my head,
off the top, below the belt, whatever you want to call it. Okay.
And so, a lot of the times we create this content because we come up with a really good idea and we have this intuition to create this content. we have no idea what's going to go viral. Like, we have no idea what's going to be picked up. And yesterday people were eating me alive. And I was like, this video just went to almost 800,000 today. I'm sorry I had a full book day today that I haven't had a chance to do any responses or talk to people, or, people, they don't think about what your life looks like. They're just, it's a projection. Hate is a projection. And so when this video went viral, I got the worst kind of hate. I had people saying that I was a colonizer in Mexico. I was gentrifying and I was making it difficult for Mexicans to live here, and that I was a horrible person to leave the country. I saw all types of racism. I saw exactly what immigrants have to face, which, by the way, again, I am so grateful for, because I never would have had that perspective. I am somebody that loves, am kind, compassionate, respectful to all human beings. I don't care who you are, as long as you're not an asshole. Okay. That's a totally different category. But
I'm in the human race for that. Somebody told me one time that we all bleed the same color. So we're all one race, and it's the human race.
Absolutely. We're all hurling through space on a rock together. Let's not fight each other. Okay. Like, let's work together. So, I had this happen, and some of the comments were terrible. Like, you and your family are going to be killed by the cartel. Your daughter's going to be raped by the cartel. All of these horrific things. And so as a mother, to hear that, the first thing I thought was, what have I done? What have I done? I've put my family in danger.
Right.
I've done something horrible.
You start to feel guilt, right? Based on their projections. So yeah.
Yes. Amazing. And really difficult. And so I'm going to tell you the honest truth. It took me 4 to 6 weeks to work with counselors, to work with emotional healers, to work with people that are like, hey, look, this is a projection of other people. This is not you. This is not who you are. People that know you, they love you. They know your heart. They know how you give. And the honest truth is, we're here legally. A lot of people are pissed off. They're like, you don't even pay taxes. You're here illegally. And I'm like, how the frick do you know? Right? We're here because we value the culture. We want to be
about what she's talking about.
Right? It's such a projection of how people are. And it took me a little bit of time. And here's what I got from mentors. And this is what I want to share with you, is that I would go to people that were mentoring me, that were coaching me. And I'm like, oh man, this is so tough. And by the way, one of my coaches used to be in the military. He used to be an RCMP officer, or I don't know what is called in the US, RCMP. It's not Royal Canadian.
It's an MP.
MP. Okay. So
military
he used to do that. Okay. And he said, Christina, these people, the fact they're not going to find you and hunt you down. But my husband got an email, they found his email, and they emailed him this influencer, this Jerry Springer, Mexican email, or Mexican celebrity emailed my husband and told him to commit suicide. Okay. So this is next level stuff that you're what's real and what's not. And this is what I want to tell you, having discernment when you have haters, being able to talk to other people, because, by the way, and this is something that I'm actually very grateful for. Another one of my coaches said, hey, great, you've made it. This is your next level.
Exactly.
You are being a leader. Right?
Told me in the corporate world, they're like, Tina, you made it when you start getting haters. And the bigger that you get, the bigger target that you have on your back.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't stop. And that's what I wish somebody would have told me. It's not a one-time thing. It will continue. It continued on all of my videos. It continues to this day, that people tell me to go home and get out of their country. Most of them Mexicans living in the US, right? Just ridiculous. But it's so interesting, because once you get to that level, you are always going to have hate. You are always going to have this energy coming at you. And you really need to learn in that moment, hey, am I going to move forward, or am I going to let this eat me? Am I going to, am I going to work through this personally and evaluate what's true and what isn't? And by the way, we can be grateful for some of this feedback, because sometimes the feedback is valuable. Sometimes we can learn.
Absolutely.
From it, right?
And you know what? I always tell myself, and it is hard, because anytime you get any kind of negative comments, and Christina, I commend you for being able to maybe not brush it off very quickly, but brush it off like that. Because it takes me days. When I get that hate mail, I'm like, oh my gosh, do I sound like that? Do I look like that? Do I do this? And do I do that? But somebody told me that, Tina, people who are on your level or higher than you are not going to talk crap about you.
Correct.
No. Quite honestly, most successful people, and when I say successful people, that's monetary. It's also those that have just achieved what they want in life. So it doesn't just mean money, it's status. It's true leadership, right? When people have reached a level of true leadership, they will never project hate. And so, in many cases, Christina, just hearing that story, and I know we're going to talk about a few others, I found that most of it just, not always, but it boils down to jealousy, right? The majority of it is the fact that you decided that the odds were against you in your previous situation. And so you decided to take action, right? You picked up and you moved your entire family from one country to another country, which was major risk, of course. And there's so many people that actually want to do and have what you have. However, right, it's holding them back. Fear is holding them back. So how else can they project their own insecurities? But they do it actually against you. So
I would like to ask Starr, because she just hit 98,000 people in her Facebook group. And
only 98,000, Starr?
Oh, come on, Starr.
She is such a slacker. Starr, I see it there. How do you handle all of that?
Yeah, so we're waiting to hit 100K to celebrate, but yeah, we just hit 98,000 in the group, so I'm so excited. Thank you guys.
Awesome. That is awesome.
So I put out a post yesterday about this topic, which was, people basically being haters and disrespecting those who are like succeeding or just doing positive things in the world. And I also told them that, basically these women who are being negative or treating people a certain type of way need to basically get their act together. The reason I did that was because one thing I like, my boys play video games and they're on the computer all the time. And somebody made a comment on that post. They said, just, block and delete. So I say that all the time to my kids, block and delete, block and delete.
Look, that's my favorite thing, delete, block.
Yes, we can easily do that. But I felt compelled to actually put a statement out because I actually am a very positive person and I bring a lot of positive energy in my space. So I have a lot of women who are super positive, support women. I do the same. So we do attract who we are. But I also have felt this shift of people being rude, negative, imposing their opinions and views on you, like Christina, the things that you went through. And my thing is, if you're in this space and you're a supportive person, why are you being negative? So I also feel like some people need to give themselves a reality check. How are you communicating to other people? Were you rude with what you said? And also, why are you doing these things? Like, what are you internally unhappy about? And then there were two people that commented that this might be a self-reflection thing. And no, the fuck it's not.
Whoa. When Starr drops the uncensored, then we know we're getting real.
We're in business.
Now you are pushing your stuff off to Starr.
So I'm not in the energetic space. I know some of them are like that. Oh, you need internal reflection and things like that. But no, I just feel like as women, we definitely need to be positive. So my thought process on this is, if you are going to be in the online space, yes, we are going to get hate. Yes, people are going to comment on your videos like Christina has.
Of course.
Yes, people are going to say things to me that I don't like. But at the same time, like, we need to be more positive.
Right.
I mean, as the gratitude specialist herself, I mean, it is so hard to stay in that positivity. Believe me, I know. If things are going wrong, it's hard to stay in the positivity. If you're in a negative mindset or if you're in a negative space, it's hard to stay in that positivity. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't watched the news in over 10 years. Because I just, if I see
I do listen into some alternative sources just so I've got my ear, kind of my finger on the pulse.
I've never been that person to start watching the news at 5 o'clock. And I remember when I moved back in with my parents for that 5 months, they started watching the news at 5 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And every single day when I would wake up, I'd be like, good morning. And they'll be like, good morning. And I'm like,
yeah. But you see, Tina, like all of those generations before us, they were just being programmed, right? It's just like plugging in and watching all of the things that are telling you how to prepare and live your life instead of you making those decisions for you. Absolutely. So in my little video that I kind of just randomly put out when I was finishing some shopping and doing some errands. Right. But I'm just putting some things out. one of the things that, I talked about was kill them with kindness. And it is so hard to reach that level because, first of all, and I'll just kind of speak for myself personally, maybe it resonates with some of our audience. I'm a man. Okay. I am a man. I know this whole time, especially,
oh my gosh,
many people are confused, but I am a man.
Depending on what dictionary,
I don't need to prove it on the show, but
true.
I'm one of those individuals that was raised to play hard, fight hard, and when I'm disrespected, I'm gonna deliver, right? I've learned a lot over the years. I've learned through many things, martial arts, just fundamental things, my faith, even my wife, right? Learning how to dial back, how to become a little bit more reserved in life. When her and I were dating, I probably wasn't always that way. So she's kind of helped me with that. But I've learned a lot over the years, and I've started to realize, I don't need to react negatively when something is, pushing me back, right? That resonating negative energy with negative energy. And so killing them with kindness, the reason why I wanted to just kind of talk about that for a moment is, I've found that if I actually stop for a moment and I look at the individual, like no matter what, if they've said it verbally to me, if they put it in writing, if it's something that they're putting out in a video content, whatever it may be, I'm always thinking like, what's going on in their life right now that makes them want to, push this negative energy out. And so with everything that all of us are saying, but all three of you in your examples, it's like, even recently, I see a lot of that. Starr, you talked about, I'm seeing more and more of that. And I think there's a lot of factors, right? One, in the digital world, it's pretty easy for me to say something on this side of the screen when somebody's not right in front of me, right? That's first and foremost. And then also we kind of live in this day and age where there's not a lot of repercussions based on actions.
Correct.
Or people have this perception that they can get away with anything that they want to say. That isn't always the case. But again, killing them with kindness, I kind of sit there and I'm thinking, okay, what kind of space are they in right now? Like what's going on in their life? And I have found, not always, but about 50% of the time, 1 out of 2 times when this happens and I connect with that person or open some dialogue in a kind of approaching manner of like, hey, you seem to be, a little angry. And I'm more, quite honestly, I want to know, are you okay? Like, is there anything I can do? Can I help? Now that'll do 1 of 2 things. It's going to escalate it to where they're like even more pissed off because they're like, I can't believe you're coming at me like this, right?
That's How dare you respond to my negative comment?
Yeah, at that point, delete, block. But there are so many times, like 50% of the time, I will get people that say, well, yeah, I'm a little pissed off because blah, blah, blah. And then I believe, Starr, you said this, or Christina, sometimes it is valid, right? Like sometimes it's their perception of like, well, you said something that made me feel like it was a racist statement or just something of that nature, right?
Yeah,
and so when I hear things like that, I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, man, I'm kind of the complete opposite of what you just stated. So let's kind of walk back through this conversation. What did I say? What did I post? What did I do? What triggered you? And man, I have, and I'll drop my mic right now and pass it on. But I will say that I have had so many positive relationships built off of having conversations with haters, people that are still friends and clients today, because I took an opportunity to ask them, like, what the hell's going on? Like, are you okay? Can I help in any way?
You have an opportunity.
Another thing that you can do is negative comments are still comments. Negative engagement is still engagement.
Yeah. Well, politicians thrive on that. So yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, I've seen it everywhere. So on social media, even respond to those negative comments. Hey, thank you so much for your opinion. You can put it all in bold capital letters if you wanted to. But you know what opinions are. Everybody has one. Just like but you just respond to it, and you got to take it and with a grain of salt, and maybe turn it around.
It made me think about that, Starr. So I'm glad that, like you said, sometimes you delete them, you block them. and then sometimes it's valid. It's good to respond and just leave it there. I think those are like lessons learned. And quite honestly, sometimes you don't have to say anything, because leaving that hate as an example, or kind of a thumbprint of their attitude, you'll see that your supporters will jump in on, and they've already got your back, right? They're like, yes. I'm sure, Christina, you have people saying, F you, and you don't know Christina, she's an amazing person. And,
they get into it.
I like that.
Yeah. And then your video goes viral, but you have an opportunity to create a super fan, right? If you address and honor and have a discussion, right? And by the way, pick your battles, right? You have to pick your battles with people that are willing to have respectful conversations, because there are people out there that are just going to be dicks. Like, that's just how it is.
That's what they do. They thrive on it, right?
That's right. That's right. And you were talking, Robert, you were talking about like there not really being any repercussions of like who these people are on social media, and a lot of them, by the way, don't have any skin in the game. And I want to bring that up. But one of the quotes that I think of is by Mike Tyson, is that people are getting too comfortable not being punched in the face these days.
Man,
like we're getting too comfortable.
Can I get that on a t-shirt?
Yeah, and there's always these different factors, right? Like you talked, there's different factors of like people's perspective. So do you have a victim or a victor mindset? Do you feel like you're in control of your life, or do you feel like the world is happening to you? Because you're going to have a completely different perspective of what other people see and what they say if you see it as the world is out to get you, right? And I think that a lot of the time we don't think about what the big thing is going on. Another thing that contributes hugely to this is like, we're in the middle of a recession. We're in the middle of a receding economy, right? And by the way, in a receding economy, what happens? The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Okay. So now there's a bigger generation, or there's a bigger gap between wealth. And guess what happens? The poor people get pissed off and they get really mad, and there's more anxiety, and there's more hate, and there's more resentment and jealousy that comes in this point in time. And so you have to understand that all of these worldly things are happening, contributing to how people see the world. And one of the things that I wanted to say really quickly is a Brene Brown quote, because it always sticks with me, and it's by Roosevelt. It's actually came from Roosevelt, right? But she says, I want to be in the arena. I want to be brave with my life. And when we make the choice to dare greatly, we sign up to get our asses kicked. And boy, do we ever, right? We can choose courage or we can choose comfort, but we can't have both, not at the same time. And if you're not in the arena also getting your ass kicked, I am not interested in your feedback. And I will tell you, 90% of the haters that are out there that are putting negative comments in, they have zero content. They've got less than 100 followers. They're usually their screen names are like something terrible, and that's what they're there for. And my husband often says to me, he's like, Christina, they're probably bots. They're probably bots that have been put out there to just create conflict, right? A lot of them. And so we have to remember that and not take everything so personally, because really the only person that I'm taking advice from, and the only person that really I value their opinion, is somebody I would trade places with, somebody that I really value their morals, their values, their decision, what they've created in this world. Nothing else matters. And actually any time wasted on being upset about those things, even though we may have to work through our own trauma, we may have to work through some of those things to become stronger. That time is so wasted if you're wasting it on people that do not matter in your life. If you would not invite them into your home to have dinner, they do not need to take up real estate in your brain.
Well, you know what? Also, some of the most haterade in your life are family and friends, especially when you're in our world, in the entrepreneur marketing space.
Well, right. It's because again, it kind of goes back to that. Most people that are in the comfort zone, right? They want others to stay in that zone with them, right? They say you're the product of the 5 closest people that you surround yourself with. And so, when people are sitting around, in their kind of mundane world of no change, no growth, they want all of their closest friends and family to be in that same zone. And the minute you step out, right? The minute that it's like, Tina's going to go off and write a book. Tina's going to go out and actually help thousands of people write their book.
That's never going to happen.
Right. The minute you do that, people immediately start to say, oh my gosh, why are you doing that? Why are you wasting your time with that? And how are you going to help others do that? How are you going to make money doing that? Right? Like everyone has all these, and those are sometimes, like you said, the closest people to you, the people that you have perceived as those that love you the most. a lot of times it's just education. They just don't understand because you're coming from an entirely different mindset than they currently have or what they've been taught. But we're in this day and age where there's a big shift happening, right? That, and again, it's the generations above us. We're ever evolving change. People are not going to school, working hard to get those degrees, to get a job that they're in for 30 years, and then they retire comfortably. Like those years are kind of gone. And so, again, it takes some education. But that kind of brings me back to my next point, and I'll throw it to the floor, and that is prove them wrong, right? Yeah. So that's a huge dynamic and fuel for me. So when people actually say that, family, friends, foe,
use it as fuel.
Prove them wrong. And there's different ways that we can do that. What do you guys have around that?
I definitely prove them wrong. Use it as fuel to go against you. But I also know, taken from experience, is that it takes a lot from you to turn that around, to use it as fuel. Because because if it's your family, your mom, your dad, your sisters, or somebody like that, you trust them and you're like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. And maybe I am not good enough. And maybe, maybe. And then you talk to somebody, call Christina up and she's like, no, you are a freaking rock star.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
But she's like, no, you're a freaking rock star. Go out there and do it. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So how do you close the gap? Christina, Starr, how do you close that gap?
I'm very selective around who's in my space. I don't care if you're my mother or my father and your negative energy, you're not in my space. You're not in my world. So I'm very selective, like being with you guys. And like I share all the time, I kind of mastermind with a couple of other colleagues who are like doing what I'm doing or even better. Those are the people that I surround myself with. I'm not going to waste my time with people like that. And also, Robert, I thought it was good. And also back to what Christina was saying too. I used to have women come into the retail store that were like so bitter, like they walk in and like their face was so ugly and like they have this really terrible attitude. And it was like a game to me. And I'd be like, are you
Let's see if I can change their facial expression.
Fix your face.
Tell them with kindness, like Robert would say, but it was almost like, what's wrong with them? And so now in the online space, it's a little bit different, right? Because like you said, people are more bold, and you may not have that opportunity to get into like a full conversation with them, like what I would do in those types of situations. So for me, I'm not going to stay around that energy in the online space.
Yeah. I think that's
well, and it anchors you, right? It anchors you. If you stay in that space, it's going to draw down everything. I love having this network that we have, and having mentors and people that will encourage you and that do love you like unconditionally. Those are typically where I will draw, my source of motivation when all those other things kind of hit. And like you said, Starr, you don't have to live in that space. Most people think they do, right? Most people think they do, which is why most children in an abuse situation, they come out of that thinking that they're still in that space and that the world only offers them negativity. Christina, I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
No, you're totally fine. And so, I think that sometimes we also have to, like you were talking before, Robert, about like considering the source and considering what people are going through. And sometimes like the people closest to us say things out of concern, right? But they don't know how to communicate those things. Right. And so like you may hear things like when I first got into network marketing, people were like, when are you getting a real job? And then we retired my husband and he came home and they're like, yeah, but he can't be happy being at home. Like he's got to have a real job. Like when's he going to go back to work? And it's like, excuse me, we've decided to design our life this way because we're two humans that are intentional about our time and what we want in this world. Not everybody has that, but it could be as subtle as, I could never do what you do, right? Or do it, you can do it, right? And they kind of roll their eyes, but you can do it, it'd be you. And it is, it's an underlying. And so when you spend time with people like that, and not to say, that family doesn't have good intentions or friends don't have good intentions, that's fine. But what I've learned that is so important is to evolve the people that you spend time with. And really, I value, and I'm very intentional about my time and where I spend it, who I spend it with, and to have people people that I really admire and I look up to. You know, like I never would have said yes to this show if I didn't think that you guys were all amazing human beings, right? Like I would have just said, oh, you know, I don't have time, or it's not for me, right? So the choices that I make are in alignment, and I make those choices from the moment I get up to the moment where I put my mindset, to the moment when I go to bed. All of those things are in alignment. And sometimes we feel like we're stuck and like, oh, every time I go out for, you know, coffee with my friend, all she does is bitch about her life, right? And we feel like, oh, I've got to lift him up. And it really comes down to this. You decide if you are going to be around people that are solution oriented or people that are constantly complaining about the problem. And when I see hate messages come out on, or comments or whatever it is, you know, people saying, I can't believe she's not sharing the virus that, you know, she got over to have this baby. And like, I'm not a doctor, right? I'm not here to do those things. I'm here to inspire and encourage and help you be an advocate for your own health, which is really my main message. It's that I'm not here to gatekeep and do those things. You're going to see this world in your view, right? All of us see this world with a filter from our life experiences, from our upbringing, from all of those things, right? And so you can actually tell a heck of a lot about somebody by what they say, what they do, and how they respond instead of react, right?
That's so true.
I just seen a reel the other day from one of our friends, Christina, John and Nadia Melton, who I seen at Faith Over Fear.
Oh, yeah.
And you know what? I love that. They are so amazing. We're sitting there in Starbucks and we're having Starbucks, and you know how Nadia is.
Yeah, she's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, Tina, I just love this. No. But they were saying that if you hang around with 5 broke people, you're going to be, or 4 broke people, you're going to be the 5th one. If you hang around with 4 rich people, you're going to be the 5th one. If you hang around with 4 negative people, you're going to be the 5th.
I was going to say, broke can be broken mindset, heart set, whatever it may be. Yeah, it's absolutely.
I mean, you have to, and I've had to do that with close family members. You have to say, you know, I love you, but you have to put that arm's length space away, or simply get out of the situation altogether, which is what I had to do with a couple of my family members. And it's hard. It hurts, definitely, but you have to get out of that, no matter who it is, your family, your friends. Sometimes as you grow, you need to prune away the bad seeds and the bad weeds and the bad leaves that are on there. And you
well, you can only like coach and support a scarcity mindset and a like someone that's living, you know, this life of trauma. Like you can only support it for so long. You should still be there. Like that's what our intentions are, right? To serve and to help others. And so that even means with family members or even people that we've had, you know, like that we've had relationships with, where you physically are in that space and you're trying to help them get out. You're trying to pull out that positivity. You're trying to work through things. But at some point when people decide and they choose to live in that space kind of, you know, eternally, I usually close the door. I've had, unfortunately, I've severed a lot of relationships with friends over the years, because every single time you get on the phone and you're talking about something, they want to talk about how everything in the world sucks. People suck. My job sucks.
And those are those energy vampire drainers that take everything out of you. And you get off the phone and you're like,
oh, I know. Sometimes when you actually do live in that space too long, have you ever, I mean, I'm speaking to all of us here. Have you ever got off the phone or got out of that situation where you've talked to somebody way too long in that negative space, and then you're just like, kind of like, I'm unplugged for the day. I think I'll just turn on Netflix and do nothing, right? Because
in fact, Jenny Potter taught me something how to do, and you have to, when we're going to have her on the show here in the next couple of weeks. Sometimes you have to put that barrier up, because as coaches, right? We have all those people who call us and we have an hour-long coaching call of negative. And even if you're like, okay, so what happened positively? And they're like negative. And you're like trying to bring them back. It's hard. So, you know, you have to.
Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't, right? And the whole point is like, you can't save other people, right? You can save yourself and you can show them how you did it. But if they don't choose that for themselves, if they don't choose that kind of attitude, and it is about creating boundaries. It is about saying, you know, and here's the thing. This is how I determine who gets to be in that really close inner circle, is if you are not supporting me and cheering for me for what I'm doing without agenda, without trying to benefit from me, without, we could have completely different views. And if you're still cheering me on, you are my human and I will cheer you on, even if I don't agree with you on everything that you do.
Even if you're trying to make profit of me having a baby. I mean, come on.
But as soon as you see that light of somebody's true self, and I've severed relationships with people that like I've supported through things that I do not agree with, things that I'm just like, I'm cheering you on, and then all of a sudden they turn on me for something. I'm like, okay, you no longer get my support. You no longer have the honor of being around me. You no longer, no matter what. And I never had to say you're wrong. Right? I never had to say that. I never had to say those things. But I think it is so important, especially with family and friends. If they are not cheering for you and they only cheer for you when it benefits them and it works for them, they're not really your friend. And sometimes we have to learn that the hard way, that lesson the hard way.
In fact, I just did a TikTok the other day that when, I always remember the people that were there for me when I was down. But I always remember the people that were not there for me when I was down too.
Yep. 100%.
But isn't it so rewarding when you are supporting your clients or your friends or family members and they actually implement, take action and get results? I love that.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny that we're talking about all this because, once in a while I'll put out these just kind of little intriguing posts like we all do that will say things like, make your next $1 million. Everyone has the ability to make $1 million or whatever, because most people are like attracted to this monetary goal in life. But what they don't understand is in order to achieve it, and by the way, that's a fact that every single person in this entire world has the ability to make millions of dollars. I mean, if we're just talking about money, this is a fact. However, it's funny how many times I've had conversations with someone, whether it's an actual client or kind of an initial consultation where they're just like, I just want the blueprint or the roadmap on how to make $1 million. But when you delve in and you start peeling back these layers, you're like, you know what we really need to do is start with mindset and heart set first. And if we can,
no, let's just skip over that.
It needs to be this alignment. No. I get all that. I've got books about all that stuff, right? I just want to make $1 million. Can
you just show me the roadmap? You're like, no.
Right. So
because
it's like
not a negative,
you don't understand.
One negative millionaire out there.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
One.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
No, you can't. And you can't sustain it. I've known people, by the way, I've known people to make a lot of money that maybe don't have the best mindset or don't have a service heart, but they don't keep it. Right? They don't grow it. They don't move forward. And I think that so often people are chasing that dollar versus, okay, well, I've got to work on becoming the person that can create that kind of income, that can give that kind of service. Like, if I worked a part-time job for 20 hours a week and I didn't show up 10 hours for the 20 hours, I would get fired. Right. And so if you are not showing up every day with the mindset of serving and helping and problem solving in your current environment, right? Like when these people are like, leave the country or you're gentrifying. And I'm like, actually, I'm here legally. I pay taxes. I've created jobs. I help local businesses. I contribute largely to the economy here. So all of those positive things. And you realize there's actually a huge community of people that understand that and promote you in that and want to be a part of that. But like every negative review, have you ever gone on vacation and you're researching hotels, right? And you look at these 5-star beautiful hotels and there's like all of these negative comments and you're like, oh, well, I don't know if I want to go there. But it's always the people that have something bad to say that will take the time to write a terrible review. If you had a fabulous holiday, you're going to like go and tell all your friends, right? You're not going to sit there and write a negative review. And if your life is a positive place, like, like Robert said, if you are successful, if you've got a great mindset, if you contribute to society in a large way, there's no way that you're taking time to make a shitty little comment on somebody's thing. Even if you do disagree with them, even if, you're just like, okay, well, that's their opinion, right? And there's this self-reflection and that happens in conversations too, right? Have you ever been in a conversation with a friend where you're a little bit irritated about the conversation? I gave this example yesterday, actually. And so talking to a friend and they're talking about their morning routine, right? They go to the gym for a couple of hours and they meditate, then they do all, whatever. And then all of a sudden they get to their workspace. And I'm like, my morning is a shit show. Like I'm trying to get my kid out the door. I'm like, maybe I have 5 minutes to think about how the rest of my day is going to go. But I'm like, definitely don't have time to go to the gym for an hour and a half. Don't have time to meditate for an hour and a half. And so I got a little bit irritated in that conversation. And then I was like, okay, I hung up the phone and I was like, why am I so irritated at that conversation? I said, because I have this jealousy for the peace and organization in her life that I do not have. But she doesn't have kids. She doesn't have anything. You know, she doesn't have the life that I have. She doesn't have, you know, the marriage that I'm obtaining. She doesn't have any of those things. And those are something that I value so deeply. Like, I value being a mother. It is something that it is my purpose. I want to raise great kids that contribute to society, that are leaders, right? Like, that is something so valuable to me. And I said, you know, if I had this life, then I wouldn't be able to have this life, right? Like, you have to choose between those two things. And it, again, when that conversation came back, I didn't feel that anxiety or that stress or that annoyance at the conversation, because I had evaluated what was going on in my life and realized, no, I've made these choices because of what my values are. She's got a different value system, and that's totally fine.
You know, Christina, I was watching one of your videos the other day, and it was of Izzy with her little second grade class, and she had her little Spanish outfit on, and she was dancing, and she was sitting there speaking Spanish, and I was showing Paco, and he was like, "Oh, I just love her." And I said, "Don't you wish like you can be a kid again and not have to deal with anything? Because they don't see color, they don't see racism, they don't see anything. You know, if somebody's hurting, they're gonna be like, oh, something wrong. They're gonna go over there and give them a hug. Like, they just don't care, right? Like, they're like, I'm just gonna go over there and help them. Oh, you're hungry? Here, you can have mine. You know, like, you know, they just like are like, they're just such givers, and they don't see any of this race, and they don't see any of the negative, and they always stay in this little happy little bubble. And I'm like, don't you just wish like you could just stay that way? Because she had like the brightest smile on her face and sitting there dancing in her little Mexican little dress.
She's the only blonde out of everybody, right? Like, she totally stands out.
I love that though. I love
sorry, Robert, I don't mean to cut you off, but the piece of that is, like, she has gone to school with kids with disabilities. The girl that she sits next to in school doesn't speak. She doesn't speak at all. And as he talks about my friend at school, it's not pointing out the differences. And I think that this is such a critical conversation right now, because people are so dead set on telling how they're different and how they need to be heard and all these differences. But like you said before, Tina, we're all human beings on this planet. Our kids don't see race or color or gender or anything like that. They're just kids, and they love and they have compassion for everybody. And so if we could just continue those lessons down the line and be the example, right? Because our little side comments, the things that we say or the things that we do, or sometimes, you know, Ryan will say to me,
how we describe
things. And Ryan sometimes will say to me, let's not have this conversation in front of Izzy because little ears, right? Like, we need to have this as an adult conversation. And I think that having that discernment as well is so important, because for so many kids, their childhood is being robbed from them right now. And they just deserve to be kids and not be propaganda, you know?
Yeah. Nowadays, you're absolutely right. With technology, with the systems, with things that are being implemented in, you know, education, it's like we want them to grow up immediately. And I'll tell you what, I deal with grumpy grown-ups all day long, right? So I don't need a bunch of little grown-ups running around with the same attitude. I want to see their beautiful faces and see them leaping around and dancing, and I want to hear that laughter. Like, I love that. There's nothing better than when I have a hard day of everything that we're talking about, right? How to navigate hate. When I come home and my two little girls are laughing and running around and chasing each other and tickling each other or whatever, and then I dive into the mix, it completely shifts my own, you know, mindset, and it kind of brings me back into alignment with the things that matter most. I just, due to the sake of time, I did not want to dismiss one important thing. And that is, you know, we're talking a lot about hate and negativity and, you know, critics and all these things that we're all going to face in life, business, anything in life. Anytime that we decide to actually make a change or to move forward or to move up in any manner, right, just to elevate in some way, we're going to have people that want to anchor us, pull us back down. So based on that, though, I do want people to understand it does not mean, and we are not talking about the fact that we aren't ourselves going to have bad days, that we ourselves are not going to dislike or even feel some hate or hatred towards something as well. And so that just that happens, right? We live in a negative world at times, and sometimes that negativity amplifies through us. So let's just talk about that for a moment, because I want to make sure that people understand it doesn't mean that, you know, all of a sudden you're going to have this beautiful, positive mindset and heart set, and that you are, you know, that you're not ever going to be a victim of this. It does happen. I think it's more about being equipped with the tools and the ability of what we're talking about to pull yourself out of that rut, to be able to pull yourself back into, you know, from kind of the world and back into this space of abundance once again. What do you think?
Yeah, having the tools. Go ahead, Tina.
You know, you have to stop yourself and say, ooh, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in this negative. Oh, you know what? Let me switch this thing around. You know, just like you ask people, you know, they're saying, oh my gosh, my gosh, my gosh. You know, the other day Paco was saying something and I was like, well, what are you grateful for? And he goes, I'm grateful for this and that, you know, so like it kind of like switched the whole thing around. And it's good to see that happening. You know, we were in a store the other day and this guy was like, yeah, who was asking Paco, are you Spanish? You Spanish, right? And I was like, no, he's not Spanish. He's half, he's half black, half white. He goes, oh, really? You look Spanish. And he goes, are you Spanish? And I was like, yeah. He goes, oh, you don't look Spanish. And I was, we were like, thank you for your opinion. We're going out. We're leaving. And then he kind of looked. He goes, oh, that's kind of weird that you guys are together like this. And I was like, what? Are you serious?
I think too, you know, having the reflection of like, we're only human. And
That's
so
right.
like I can give positive feedback for the negative, but like by the 500th comment, you know, that I'm lying or you're terrible or whatever, I get a little spicy sometimes. Like, I'm not going to lie. I come back in and I'm like,
we all do. And that's okay, right?
right?
That's
my little spicy Italian meatball,
Yes.
right? Comes out. And I get and like finally you get worn out. And I'll tell you, I will catch myself, okay, you just commented back something that was a little spicy. And so I'll tell you, you have to have tools. Number one, exercise is a great tool. Go work it out, go sweat it out, get it out of your goddamn system, right? Just go. The second thing I've learned to do is it's called a gratitude rant. Tina, I don't know if you've ever taught this, but like I do 1 minute of talking out loud of the things that I'm grateful for. What are the things I'm grateful for this? I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this, just to change my energy. And then sometimes you gotta walk away, right? Like one of the things that I love about Joe Rogan, because you know, whether you love him or you hate him, we've been listening to him for 10 years. He's a pretty well-rounded guy. And you know, people that have got little clips of him here and there. And
spicy too, Christina.
He's a little spicy too, right? But if you get to know him and you've listened to his content over and over and over again, you know who he is as a human. And that's true for all of us that have showed up over the years on social media. Like we may have a bad day. We may say something that we get some shade for, but like, you know who we are at our core. And one of the things that I think about him all the time is he's like, I post and ghost. I am not reading any negative tabloid shit. I am not reading any of the comments. Post and ghost, my friends, and like never look at it again,
like
right?
That. Post and
like,
ghost. All right.
Yeah. And like, so when I have a video go viral, which by the way, I usually find you hit the 1 million mark and you've got all your fans. As soon as you hit the over the 1 million mark, ooh boy, you got a little mix of people that are going to come out and give you their opinion, right? And so I just get to the point that I've got all this positive feedback. As soon as it starts getting negative, I'm like, I'm no longer viewing the comments of this post anymore. I'm going to move on to creating new content because it's not actually bringing in what I want. And so how can I create content? And by the way, this is part of failing forward, right? This is part of doing things to figure out, I should have said that differently, or maybe I could do it this way, or maybe I could come up with a follow-up video. You know, I've got a whole bunch of people saying, oh, well, you didn't tell us this virus, or you didn't tell us the medication. So I did a follow-up video and I said, look, there's personal privacy, there's medical privacy. I don't want to give you a medication that you go take that could interact with something you take or who you are, your health, right? Those are there's like liabilities that go along with this. You have to understand both sides. And you can come back and give me shade after that. But if you don't see the other side of it, again, if you're not in the arena playing the same game, I don't care what you think.
Exactly. And on Facebook, you can't promote medications and things like that. They don't all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing like getting put in Facebook jail just because you're replying to somebody else's negative comment, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so I think that in itself, right, is an important lesson that we have to understand that we are just human. It doesn't mean that we aren't going to succumb to some kind of, you know, overwhelming kind of a negative space ourselves, but it's being able to recognize it, right? And then having the tools to be able to equip yourself to say, no more, like I'm going to put an end to this and I'm going to get back on track. That's the most important thing. Most people, they fall into this rut and they just keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And again, whether you like him or not, I'm glad you brought up a name like Joe Rogan, because it's such a big name. So that those that actually are listening to it later on, they'll actually understand that you don't have to have the same opinions as me at all. And in fact, I embrace the fact that we don't all have the same opinions. I don't want, 4 Robert Walls here on stage with me. I don't. It'd look pretty good. No, I'm just joking. All right, but anyways, I don't want that. But however, I'm just kidding, lady. But the thing that I wanted to mention though is that, in regards to like a Joe Rogan or something of that nature, it really bothers me more that we cannot think for ourselves, that we can't dig a little deeper. And so most people, they just have read the headline. They've never listened to one episode.
They've hit a clickbait, right? A little clickbait.
And they go, oh, this guy's a hater. He's a racist. He's this, he's that. And so that is what they've adopted, right? And by the way, I'm just using that as an example. It could be any topic we're talking about. Somebody is going to read a headline and they're going to adopt that as their truth without doing any research themselves. So I also want to put that out there. Before you start throwing some shade and hating on people, like really take a look at the facts, explore, understand both sides of you. I have empathy from all different kinds of levels, even those that I would be 100% opposed to. I do try to step back at times and see it from their viewpoint.
Yes. I had as you know, we have a book coming out next week, Be a Glow Stick Girl. And I brought together 16 amazing authors, and there was some chapters that were put in that my editor was editing, and she was editing, right?
The editing editor?
She was editing them, but she was also making them politically correct. And some people didn't like that. And so I was like, listen, it's their voice. And that's one thing I pride myself on, is to keep their voice. And so I was like, listen, you have to keep it with how they want to say it. You have to keep it the way they want it, because this is their story. It's not our story. This is their story. And if they don't want to be politically correct, I'm not going to make them be politically correct. It's their chapter.
Well, and it's an opinion, right? It's an opinion, and it's a projection of what she believes versus the story that's coming from you. And I think that it's really important in that circumstance to be able to trust that your voice will be heard. And especially if it's something that's controversial, then you want to make sure that it is very clear in what you're saying and what you can stand behind, right? Like, I want to know that when my family reads a chapter, and I am blessed to be a part of this book with Tina, I want to know that when my family reads that chapter, that they have a clear picture of who I am, even if they don't agree with me, but it's also in a respectful way, but that my points and who I am and my value system is not being lost in that process. And I think that that's a really good point, Tina, that, often we want to maybe influence people in a way that is beneficial to the whole.
Sound like this, and like, no, I do want to sound like that. This is
very important, because right now I believe there's a huge attack on freedom of speech. I think that people are losing that, not only in censorship. I mean, look at Canada. You can't even get outside news sources anymore on social media or for Google or anything, right?
We're actually we're getting our news, by the way, like if you listen to any alternative type news, we're getting our news in the United States, like the facts and the truth, from the UK and other countries. So it's pretty sad that we're getting our news, what's happening right here in your backyard. You have to hear it from other countries. But anyway, that's,
and even triangulate
that's a whole nother topic.
Like listening to different sources and using some critical thinking to connect the dots and try and figure out what is the truth here, because everybody has got some sort of propaganda behind what they're pushing, right? All the content that we make is to inspire and promote and sell our stuff, have people work with us, right?
But speaking of being broken and shining bright, next week's show on Uncensored Entrepreneurs, we're going to have all of our authors for Be a Glow Stick Girl here on this show, because next week, September 28th, is our big launch day. It's our bestseller day on Amazon. Christina, I don't know if you know this, I haven't put it in this chat yet, but we just hit publish in Amazon, so we're just waiting for that approval.
Woo!
I was like,
yeah.
Let me just tell you, this was a
congrats
put together.
That's awesome.
But it's
I'm
16
very excited.
amazing women that have been broken like a glow stick and have been able to take that brokenness and able to shine brightly. And there's miscarriage, divorce, abuse, trauma, alcoholism, drug addiction. I mean, everything that you can possibly think of is in this book. And I'm so grateful for all of you guys. Christina, thank you so much for being one of the contributing authors. Jessica Higdon was our person who wrote our forward, so I'm so grateful for her. But such amazing, amazing stories of people. And some of these people, this is the first time that they have shared their story, and I love it. I absolutely love it. So make sure you guys join us next week for Uncensored Entrepreneurs at 1 p.m. Eastern.
Awesome. So we're gonna wrap things up today. We have a lot to always talk about. Once again, as a reminder, if there's topics that you would like us to discuss, please, even if you're watching the replay later, throw it in some of the comments. We do read each and every one of them. If you're a hater and you want to throw some shade in the comments as well, then based on this topic, we know how
Good luck.
to manage and navigate through some of those things.
As we do not want to be posting ghosts.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And then with that being said, I would like to kind of roll us out again with our sponsor of today's show. So Tina, tell us a little bit more about Sonic.
Dan Meyer and Sonic VA. We are so grateful to have our sponsors, Dan Meyer with Sonic VA. You can grab a hold of him at 925-595-4079 or go to his facebook.com/Sonic Virtual Assistant. Grab your virtual assistant needs because everybody needs one.
Awesome. And on that note, we are still taking a couple slots for some future sponsors as well. So very excited. Thank you, ladies and everyone, for contributing and joining in. And here are 5 reasons why you may want to use a virtual assistant in your business and life. See you later.